Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining us. Today on the podcast, Catherine and I are going to talk about how to leverage your marketing budget and increase your profit margin by getting more impressions and reaching new people. You know, it's really important for you to understand the power of impressions in your marketing and how to leverage them in a way that, frankly, most companies have absolutely ignored. To give you the practical takeaways, we outline the 4 essential methods you need to achieve the perfect marketing campaign. And if you can grasp the power of multiple impressions, you'll not only reach more new customers than ever before, but you'll also increase your conversion rates in every part of your marketing and sales process. And if that sounds good, then let's jump in. When we work with clients to build marketing campaigns, the first thing we do is build them a solid foundation. But the very next step is to launch that campaign. And the 2 goals of that are to
build impressions and reach new people.
Excellent. And when we build impressions and reach new people, why are those 2 things the main goal of this next phase? Why isn't it just to get customers? Why isn't that the goal?
Because ideally, you're actually reaching people who don't quite know who you are. You're trying to find new people. And if the goal is to get customers right out of the gate, it's going to prove more challenging because it takes time to build your reputation, to gain their trust, to have enough impressions to where they are willing to take a risk and invest in buying an initial product from you, even if it's a small product, or giving you some of their time.
And we have tons of examples in our lives of people who have gone, I have a product and now I'm going to turn you into a customer, and take that step, because then it just turns into something that we don't like. And we have plenty of those examples, don't we?
Oh, yeah. I mean, my prime example is always when I was like 18 years old and I was trying to buy my first car. And I went to a lot, and this guy, Chuck, I mean, he literally was like, here's the keys. I'm going to sign you up right now. I mean, he was so aggressive. And I was this 18-year-old girl, and I just felt preyed upon and attacked. And it was just a horrible experience. And so I left Chuck's lot, went to a different lot, found myself a cute little Toyota Tercel, and bought it.
From somebody else.
From somebody else, because Chuck was horrific. I mean, he was the guy who literally, you equate it to, he walks into a bar and walks up to a girl and says, "Nice to meet you. Would you like to name our children?" I mean, it was gross. And we've had that in stores, right? Clothing stores, whatever, where it's something like, they just won't leave you alone. And you're like, I'm just looking.
Absolutely. And the key to all of this is realizing that when you just go for the sale too quick, then you skip over important parts, especially enthusiastic people. If you haven't taught your employees and trained them that there's other things you need to do, or you have different expectations of your marketing plan, then what ends up happening is you waste money. And then when you evaluate it, it's like, well, it's not working right, or it's not doing what it needs to do. And you're thinking, because it's all a waste of time, or it was all bad. When your sequence is out of order, getting your sequence in order is important for increasing your sales and decreasing the amount of money you're wasting, or increasing or leveraging every marketing dollar you have. So if we start with thinking about this whole idea of, we need to reach strangers, we need to reach new people with this first phase of launching a marketing plan, and then we need to build impressions. Why is building impressions something we talk about? It's amazing how not many people understand the place or the significance of impressions.
So dating back as far as the 1800s, there was research that was done that basically said you need, back then, it was a minimum of 7 to 9 impressions, 7 to 9 exposures before essentially it turns you having a product or service or idea that somebody should have into something that they're pretty sure they can't live without. And there's this great sequence. We can maybe post that or something in the notes. It's just really fun. But it was like from the late 1800s. So that building of trust, impressions are opportunities for somebody to interact and build trust. And these days, there's so much coming at us, right? Constant marketing, constant opportunities to be relieved of your finances, and go over and over again all day long. So what ends up happening is that the number of impressions we actually need has gone up significantly. Like, I think the last data was something in the 30, 40, 50 like 30 to 50 range in terms
Especially
of
in
the number of
places like
impressions.
Facebook or anything like that, where the trust is so low.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also things that are critical in the midst of the impressions part where we look at actually how much the mind needs, the brain needs for stuff. There's two ways to purchase something that we engage in, or at least we categorize them to. And one is direct sales, where I introduce the product or service to you. And if you don't buy now, you probably will never buy. So there's a lot of pressure in that sales. There's a lot of coercive language. And it's not that you don't want to be efficient with your language and the way you communicate in all types of sales. But what we find is that if somebody's doing something right now and it's a short term, I have a need now, I'm going to research, I'm going to make a purchase quickly, I'm going to move on. You have to actually make your case that your product or service is valuable.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's at the point of need. But what we realize is that people are going to oftentimes, if there's a brand, a company, a product that is actually, they've seen lots before, they actually think, oh, I have a need. I need my air conditioning fixed. Well, the first thing they do is, who are the people that do that? Their object is to find somebody quickly to fix this thing because it's broke. They're going to go to the internet now. In the old days, they went to the yellow pages. They're going to find a bunch of different companies. A lot of times in those listings on Google or anything else, you don't have much space to convince them. So what they're going to do is they're going to look for companies that they're familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
It takes impressions to get to the place to know that they're familiar with you. That's the person, when they have that need, they're more likely to get by somebody that they've heard about. They may have heard other people talk about them, but if nothing else, they've just have multiple impressions. And so we know that multiple impressions can move people through phases of long-term memory till they're top of mind. And the best case of top of mind for anybody who still doesn't quite understand it is walk down the street, stop anybody and ask them in your market, who are the top 3 companies you know exist. Even if you showed them a list of 10 companies and they recognized all 10, that's different than without seeing a list, unprompted, can they name your company?
Right.
And if they can't, you're not top of mind.
Right.
Therefore, we want to introduce ourselves to strangers and then move to building as many impressions as possible until the point at which they want or need that product or service.
Yeah.
So there's 4 ways to do that. And we're going to talk about those 4 ways. The 4 ways are advertising, content marketing, public relations, and sales. Let's start with the very first one, advertising. How would you define advertising? We buy advertising all the time. When you're talking to somebody about advertising, what are we talking about?
Talking about any time that you're spending $1 to try and gain an impression, an email address, a contact, anytime you're spending money in exchange for trying to move in this process of gaining ultimately a customer.
So when we started our company, the examples were radio, TV, newspaper,
Billboards,
even yellow pages.
Yellow pages. We did a lot of yellow pages back then.
And because it was still Google wasn't developed enough, yes.
This thick, and now it's this thick.
If you can find a printed version. Yeah, it's bizarre. And they used to have yellow pages and they used to have white pages, and now it's different.
There was this joke, the new phone book has come. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Yes.
We're old.
But in advertising, what has shifted is that there are many of those. Yellow pages are not much of a product anymore. They're still selling, but they're very insignificant. Radio, TV, some newspapers are being printed still, and that's something you can get. Billboards are still a product you can purchase.
For sure.
That are offline. Online, we now see streaming radio, any kind of streaming audio, something like that. We've got videos online. We've got advertising in social media. We've got advertising in search.
Yeah.
Google ads.
Connected TV. We've got where you're running streaming ads through multiple streaming channels. I mean, there is a lot of opportunity out there.
It's very sophisticated. What's interesting is that what we've done is we started years ago with audio only mediums that were radio. And then we moved into video mediums that was television. And both of those decreased to some extent with the whole advent of digital. And there was talk for years that television, actual TV and cable and all that was going to disappear. and radio was going to completely fail. And it's pretty much leveled out. There's still millions and millions of people who watch and listen to both of them. Yeah. But what we have now is we have audio with Spotify, Pandora, and other platforms where you can advertise on them. We also have YouTube and Instagram and all these different places, TikTok, where you can show videos and do advertising. And TikTok is flooding with advertising right now. We're hearing people starting to complain about how many ads you see.
Yep.
Because advertising is always something that's going to move in that direction where you can pay for an impression for a moment and you can make your case, whether it's 10 seconds, 30 seconds, 60 seconds. You're paying for that. That's really the core of advertising. It is still a valuable tool today to reach new people and gain impressions, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I would say most of the time, and obviously budgets are always the constraint, but really having multiple modalities, visual, audio, video, being able to show up in more than one place, because one of the things we know is that people want to interact with your brand, your products in more than one way, right? So if you have a video, if you've got print, you've got all the different kind of potential pieces you could do, the more opportunity someone has to interact with your content, the more they're going to be aware and gain those impressions and gain trust.
And I think just to leave people with a tip on really a powerful way to buy it, because when you're thinking about marketing and advertising, when you're thinking about specifically advertising and purchasing it, you're always inherently asking the question, whether you know about it or not, is this a good purchase? Am I getting a good deal on this? Is this a good price? And is my money going to return any kind of value? And how do I measure that value? Those are a lot of important questions to ask. One of the things that's really critical that comes into advertising is many people say, if I buy the medium, I can focus really tight on an individual. I can target my marketing to an individual. We even talk about that in the foundational video on marketing and your marketing plan. Make sure you're focusing. But what you want to do is, many people make the mistake of focusing their marketing with actually buying the media versus the message.
So they focus their ad dollars towards something too tight.
And what's an example of how people want to focus their marketing by what is their media?
So it would be, you're selling clothes and you only want to go after women who are 25 to 30 or 25 to 35 or whatever. And so you narrow your audience and your exposure to just that group. And while it's important that your messaging is for those people, which we talk about in a different video, the reality is if you tighten down your demo too much, you will end up paying more money for the ads, because the reality is the stations, the media companies charge
Meta, Google, everybody.
Yes. The tighter your demographic, the more they can charge you for those ads. Whereas if you have a broader demographic, a broader purchase, or it's more open, you're going to get a better price on your ads, and you're still going to reach the people that you want to reach.
Yeah. And you actually reach another group of people that most people discount.
The influencers.
And those are the influencers, the people around you, because when you're the only person that's ever heard of a product, if it's a little pricey or anything else, and it's one thing to buy a $30 piece of something, a piece of clothing or a new piece of makeup or whatever. But if it costs some money, then the first thing you start doing is I'm going to think about it. I'm going to check references. I'm going to check reviews. I'm going to check with any of my friends. Have any of them done it, seen this company? Have they heard about it? If the answer comes back, I've never heard of those people, it's going to take more trust and more risk to actually make a purchase. So when we buy this larger amount of media and we don't tighten it as much, and we use our message to tighten, we not only pay less for the ads, but we get more two groups of people, the people who will purchase and those referrals.
Yeah.
Or those
and understand, I
influencers.
realized when we say influencer anymore in these days, we're
that's a good
thinking
point.
about some massive.
So what do we mean by influencer?
Yeah. So the influencer, the easier illustration to understand what we mean by influencer in this context is when you're McDonald's and you're advertising, and let's pretend we're on the radio, right? And you're advertising to maybe to the parents, but the kids are in the back seat. And the kids have a lot of influence on where we have dinner, as it turns out, especially if they're in that stage of life where if we don't like what we're eating, we get terribly cranky, right?
And they're watching TV, they're listening to the radio, they want the toy.
Yeah. So the influencer in this language, when we're talking about ad buying, is not the big, massive TikTok influencer. It's the people around your life that speak into your life and have influence in what you do and don't do and buy and don't buy.
Yeah. And that's a perfect example of that whole influencer in this context. The influencer on social media and on those types of things, most people are paying for those influencers.
Yes.
That's paid advertising. I'm paying for somebody to take my message,
my product.
And if I'm not doing the commercial or whatever, there's like the spokesperson speaking about it. But the same concept is somebody who has influence in my life is speaking in. When the kids have influence and they're screaming from the back seat, some people listening have kids that scream from the back seat. Some people, if you don't have kids, people who will remember being a kid and how influential they could be.
Yeah.
That's real critical. That's paid advertising.
Yep.
And wanting to make sure that you do it well, you craft your message, and making sure that final point of don't focus your message or don't focus your advertising on the medium. Like when Facebook says, we can give you these people, they make $200,000 a year. They do this, this. Let your message focus and message to a wider audience is a great lead in into the next part is content marketing. Out of 4 ways that we can launch and reach strangers and build impressions, the second one is our content marketing. Content marketing in the old days was just really blogging. How would you articulate content marketing and how it's evolved?
So they're still blogging.
Okay.
It definitely is still a piece of the puzzle. In fact, I was just having a conversation with a client this morning about they did a very small site and haven't done any content added to their website specifically. And so they're not gaining any SEO traction. They're not doing anything because ultimately, especially when it comes to your website and Google likes to give credit to those who are seen as helpful and engaged and providing information to the customers that they're trying to reach. Right. So writing blogs is still a very significant piece of that online. There's other content marketing in things like email, for example, where you're actually creating really great emails that go to anyone who engages with your site. So even if someone comes and they're willing to take a risk and sign up for something that's inexpensive or free on your website, you get their email address. Content marketing is nurturing that, right? With very intentional, very clear email messaging. And email is still an extremely powerful way to distribute and put your content out there. It's very, very powerful. So those are the first 2 that come to mind for me. What do you have?
Well, when you're talking about content marketing, it becomes the content of the message becomes more important is what we're talking about. And it's true in advertising. The content of your message is always going to be important. How you shape and how you write that thing you're paying for, whether it's a written ad and a photograph in Meta and Facebook and Instagram, or it's a video or audio, the content itself and how it relates to people in today's world, the way we listen, the way we're engaged, telling stories is absolutely critical. And it has to be relevant content. It's been true since human beings started walking the earth that we pay attention to things that are relevant to us. When all you were worried about was either what you could eat or what was going to eat you, you paid attention to those 2 things when they were very relevant.
Simpler times.
And at some level in today's world, we still have this ability of, is something attacking me or is something good for me to be engaged in? Is it going to be safe for me? Is it going to fuel me? Is it going to engage me mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually? The content itself becomes real important. Now, the reason it's a separate channel is because content marketing is typically something we do and we publish. We publish to social media.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Ads, you can buy in social media, but they're social ads. This would be your social posts.
Yeah.
This would be just content that's free gated to people, free access to people. They're interested in it. And you're using it to build repetition. And then through that repetition of being in front of them, having something to say, you're saying something that's worth listening to.
Yeah. And it's organic, non-paid content that allows you to really grow your brand and provide those impressions.
And we see it across all the socials, including YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
that some people don't always realize is a social media, but it is a social media. It's free access and people are engaged in it. Are they interested in it? Starts with a thumbnail, starts with a title, and then moves into the content like we're talking about here.
Yeah.
We also see in search, we see this content, this organic content that if there's not enough good content on your site, then this is a stepped approach. Google's not going to show your site. So what you're doing is you're writing content for people and hoping Google is actually paying attention and says, I agree, that's helpful for people, and they connect it. More often than not, if you pay attention to the writing rules of Google, that works.
Yeah.
The third aspect is public relations. This is the third part of the third arm of four of how do we gain impressions and reach new people? And how do we increase that? In the beginning, we're starting small. Public relations is not about what we're saying. It's about what other people are saying about us.
Mm.
In our time as a marketing and advertising agency and now a leadership company and doing leadership coaching and business coaching with small business and medium-sized business leaders, what are some of the things that you've seen that are myths about public relations?
Well, I think probably the biggest myth is that we completely control the narrative.
Okay, explain that.
So it's a kind of a cock-up of a myth, that especially these days, we know intuitively that we don't actually control the narrative. But when we're thinking about our companies, it's like we shape what people think about us.
Yeah.
And we shape how they respond, and we have control. Well, anyone who has comments open and puts something out there that just has even a smidge of a challenge in the way the world interprets it knows that you don't actually control the narrative. So managing what people think is really something you have to be intentional about, and trying to put things out there that will help them perceive you the way you want to be perceived. But ultimately, you don't control that. You cannot force somebody to think about you the way you want them to.
Right.
What you do is do your best and then work with what's coming at you.
And public relations, in the early days, public relations was this idea before the internet of how do I get publications? How do I get newspapers? How do I get magazines? How do I get TV stations?
Yeah.
How do I get them to
talk
talk
about
about
me.
us? And hopefully they talk about us in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
Public relations became such a big deal as how do I get that free, which it turns out you pay a lot to do a lot of things to get free PR. And it's expensive to have that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But then how do you deal with it when those people who are talking say negative things about you in the press, in periodicals, everything else? And all of that transferred over into the digital realm.
Mm-hmm.
Social media is like a million news reporters.
Right.
It's a million people who have a megaphone and they have
no credentials
and not necessarily any ethics. And theoretically, the crowd is voting. But what's interesting is recently we were watching a show from the early 2000s. And one of the characters, the pollster, you might remember this, was talking to the client in politics, and they were arguing about the research. The poll says that people don't want that. And she said, no, that's not what it says. He says, it says it right there. The people say 52% say they don't want X, Y, and Z. And she's saying, A, that just might mean that they haven't heard a good enough answer. B, the public always lies. Because when people are asked, do they like trash and do they like garbage and do they like to hear about death and everything else and other people's tragedies, they say no. But then anytime a newspaper or a news organization or anything like that runs the story, their circulation goes up.
Yeah.
And so you have all these people who are saying things and a public who just consumes bad news, even though they say they hate it.
Yeah.
So PR becomes this thing of you can actually use this and you want people to say good things about you. That's why it's such a critical place. When people start to say good things because they believe in you, they like your product, they like your service, they say good things about you, that means a lot to the people they've gained trust with.
Yeah, definitely. They become one of those influencers for you that you're not having to pay for.
I think the most important thing I can say from our experience is that when people come in and say, well, we want free press because we've been told it's really easy. We've been told in books, we've been told in business books, we've been told by lots of people, it's easy. You just go get free mentions. And it is amazing how they don't think about what the needs are of the publication, the news station, or whatever, and how rarely they will cover the same story twice.
Yeah.
Or the same organization twice. And so it's not easy. It costs a lot of money. And it's important that people know this is a important vehicle, but it's not simple and easy.
Yep.
All right. That's number 3. Number 4, direct sales. Why do we add direct sales into this in a day where we talk about marketing and we have all this digital stuff and we can buy all these ads? Why is sales even have a place? Any direct sales have a place anymore?
Well, first thing I would do is ask you for the audience to define the difference between putting a digital ad out there and direct sales.
Oh, because
if it's coming up on a computer and they're saying buy this, that feels like a direct sale. So define what you're talking about when you say
no,
direct
that's a great
sales.
point, because direct sales in that context, I'm looking for that fast sale and I want to sell you now, and the computer or the website or the landing page is selling you. Direct sales, what we're talking about is actually human beings engaging with other human beings.
Stop it. People don't do that anymore.
Either on phone or face to face, but in real time.
In real time. Yeah. Okay.
1-to-1 and only 1-to-many if you're in front of a crowd. But I'm not even talking about that's an opportunity going out. That's a strategy and a tactic to be out in front of it. But really, and that could fit in kind of a pseudo PR category if you're going to go on stages and stuff. But very few people do that. We're talking about a company that says, I've got salespeople who answer the phone and talk to people. I've got people who are going out and knocking on doors, especially if you're B2B, and you're having conversations. If nothing else, you have people who are on the phone talking to people saying, I'd like to know more about your product or service. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Let me ask a few questions. Is this the right thing for you? Is this what you're looking for? Oh, it sounds like it is. And can have that dialogue in many sales opportunities to finish it. We say that we buy everything online today in America. The reality is we go to restaurants. We didn't buy it online if we go into the restaurant.
Right.
I mean, some of that changed over COVID, and we just go to a website, we order the food, and it shows up at our front door.
DoorDash, baby.
But for the most part, I go there and I say, I want this, and I'm going to make a decision. And I may even say to the salesperson, to the wait, what looks good today? Mm-hmm. And they're going to make a recommendation. I'm going to trust them. It's a sales process.
Yeah.
What's better? I've never been to this restaurant. What's better? Item A or item B? Both of them sound interesting. How many times have we been told, I wouldn't get that one. It's not that great here. This is way better.
Yep. Very helpful.
And how powerful is that kind of interaction?
Super powerful. And I would say, depending on the size, the cost of your product or service, the length of the decision process within it, direct sales becomes more and more important. Right?
We call that a sales cycle, but you're just exactly right. The length of time from somebody starting to consider a product or service to the time they purchase, the more money that's involved, usually the longer the sales cycle or the decision-making process is, and the more steps are involved in them weighing, is this a good one or not?
And developing trust, right? Because ultimately, especially, I mean, it's true, period, but it's very true on these larger products and services that people want to buy from people they like. And the way they know they like you is by that actual human interaction. So further into it, as people warm up, as they've maybe bought your initial product, or like the tripwire, your quick small product or time, whatever all those things are. Once they've done that and they've crossed that threshold and you have the opportunity to have conversation with them, that's when that direct sales becomes super important, because you can really flesh out what is their individual need and how do we meet that and make them feel good about your company and your solution and your way of rolling it out. So we've seen powerful, powerful conversation that is direct sales that has absolutely closed many, many deals. And it's really important.
And when you build out a marketing campaign and this whole second phase of the marketing campaign is finished and you're covering advertising and content marketing and PR and direct sales and that private conversation, then what's the next step?
It is about delivering the product and making sure that the customer's happy, because ultimately you've got to be able to do that.